My name is Rena Calloway, 25 years old. The smell of Mom's pot roast used to mean comfort. Tonight it smelled like dread. The moment her text came, dinner. Be home by 7. I felt my stomach tighten. Family dinners in our house weren't about food. They were stages for disappointment. I drove through Eugene's quiet streets, headlights slicing through Oregon drizzle, replaying her tone in my head. Cold, controlled, like she was rehearsing a performance. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway of the wooden house I'd grown up in, I was already bracing for impact. The house looked the same: cedar siding, yellow porch light, the maple tree that had scratched my window since I was 12, but it felt smaller. Maybe because I'd outgrown it, or maybe because I finally knew how much of myself I'd been shrinking to fit inside it. Inside, the kitchen gleamed. Mom's china, the good set, was laid out. Zachary's laughter drifted in from the living room, the kind of laughter that knew it was admired. I walked in, the scent of butter and thyme wrapping around me like a memory I didn't trust. Dad looked up from carving the roast. "About time," he said. His tone wasn't angry, just disappointed, his specialty. Mom smiled tightly. "We waited for you." She said it like a warning, not a welcome. Zachary was already seated, Tiffany beside him. They looked polished as ever, he in a crisp shirt, she in pearls too white for this room. I sat across from them, trying not to feel like an intruder in my own home. "So," Mom started, spooning potatoes like ammunition, "still at the coffee shop?" "Yeah," I said, "still saving up, still coding at night." Dad frowned. "Coding what exactly? That app thing again?" "It's not just a thing," I said. "It's called budget blocks. It helps people—" Zachary snorted. "People who can't do math?" Tiffany's laughter was a high, artificial note. "Oh, Rena, you're adorable when you talk about tech, like a toddler explaining the stock market." I swallowed hard. "I'm serious about it." Mom's fork clinked against her plate. "You're 25, living in our house, working part-time at a cafe. We've been patient, but this is ridiculous." Dad set down his knife. "You need a real job. Zachary could help get you an interview at his firm." "I don't want to work at a law firm," I interrupted. My voice sounded small even to me. "That's your problem," Zachary said smoothly. "You don't want to do anything that's hard. You quit college. You quit your internships. What's next, quitting coffee?" I looked at him, anger rising like heat under my skin. "You don't know what I'm doing." He leaned back, smirking. "You're right. None of us do. But Facebook does." Tiffany pulled out her phone, screen glowing. "We posted something cute earlier," she said sweetly. "You, in that coffee apron, wiping a table, captioned, 'Proud of my little sister, chasing her dreams one latte at a time.' People loved it. So relatable." The room spun. "You took that without asking me." "Relax," Tiffany said. "You looked cute." "It's humiliating," I said. Mom didn't look up. "You're overreacting." The laughter, the dismissiveness, it wasn't new. But tonight it landed differently. Something inside me cracked. "Why do you do this?" I asked quietly. "You act like I'm some lost cause because I'm not you." Zachary's grin widened. "It's embarrassing that you're my sibling, Rena. I mean, look at your life." Dad cleared his throat, voice final. "If you can't take responsibility, maybe you shouldn't live here." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Mom didn't defend me. She didn't even blink. My appetite disappeared. My pulse roared in my ears. I excused myself, walked to my room, and shut the door. My hands were shaking. My laptop sat open on the desk where I'd left it. The sight of it usually calmed me. Lines of code, progress inching forward. But something felt wrong. The trackpad was warm. When I touched it, the screen flickered awake, and my heart dropped. My private chat with Brooke Lane, my best friend and design collaborator, was open. Our messages about the app's budgeting algorithm and prototype sketches scrolled across the screen, messages from days ago that I hadn't opened. Someone had been reading them. Panic tightened my chest. I clicked into my project folder, deleted files. 2 of my main scripts, months of work, were gone. My backups were on a USB drive, but still, the violation hit like a punch. Footsteps. I turned. Zachary and Tiffany stood in the doorway, coffee mugs in hand like it was casual. "Oh," Tiffany said, feigning surprise. "Still working on that little app thing?" "You went through my laptop," I said. Zachary shrugged. "You leave it lying around. Maybe if you locked it." "You deleted my files!" He laughed. "You're welcome. We did you a favor. Maybe now you'll stop wasting time pretending you're some tech genius." My throat burned. "You had no right." Mom's voice called from downstairs, calm and patronizing. Rena, stop yelling. You're being dramatic. I walked past them into the kitchen, fury shaking every step. Did you know about this? I demanded. Dad looked up from the sink. Zachary said you were getting carried away. We told him to help you focus. By destroying my work? I said, trembling. Mom sighed. We just want what's best for you. You're chasing fantasies. No, I said, voice breaking. You're scared I might prove you wrong. The room went still. For a moment, no one moved. Then Zachary smirked again. You really think anyone cares about your app? You're lucky we care enough to stop you from embarrassing yourself. That was it. The moment something inside me shifted. The humiliation didn't sink this time. It ignited. I looked at all of them. Mom's cold eyes, Dad's indifference, Zachary's smug certainty, Tiffany's grin, and I knew I was done trying to belong to them. That night, while they slept, I would pack my bags. They'd deleted my code, but they hadn't deleted me. I waited until the house exhaled, TV off, pipes settling, the maple outside whispering at the window like it had something to say and didn't dare. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed and let the quiet take inventory of me, pulse still high, palms still raw from clenching. I placed my laptop in its sleeve, slid the USB backup in the tiny inner pocket, and zipped it like a secret I would not let them touch again. The room was a museum curated by a past version of me, debate team ribbons, a Polaroid of Brooke and me in crooked graduation caps, a poster of a band I pretended to like because Zachary said my taste was embarrassing. I peeled the poster off the wall. It left a lighter rectangle behind, proof something once lived here and didn't anymore. I packed what I could carry. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, my one blazer that somehow made me stand taller, socks rolled into fists and stuffed into the corners of a duffel, toothbrush, the old hoodie with the torn cuff I wore during all-nighters. The smell of lemon cleaner and old paper was suddenly sickening. I cracked the window for air and listened. Dad's heavy snore from down the hall, Mom's measured sleep like she was timing her breaths to a metronome. My phone brightness burned in the dark. I typed, Brooke, can you come? The dots appeared before I could put the phone down. Where are you? Home. Leaving. Now. On my way. 10 minutes. I almost cried at that. Not the drama of departure, not the triumphant last word I hadn't given at dinner, but the 2 words on my way and the way Brooke always meant them. On my desk, a sticky note Zachary had left months ago, curled at the corner. Do the reasonable thing. I folded it in half, then in half again, until it was too small to read and slipped it into the trash. The floor complained under my feet as I lifted the duffel. I eased the door open. The hallway was darker than usual, like the house was holding its breath. I made it past the study, past the framed family portrait where Zachary's hand sat proprietarily on my shoulder, like he owned even my body language. At the top of the stairs, I paused. My heart was a fist. The living room lamp clicked on. Put the bag down, Dad said. He was in his worn recliner, bare feet planted on the rug, the remote sitting like a black stone on the armrest. Mom was beside him, shawl pulled tight. Their faces were composed, like this was an appointment we'd all put on the calendar. I'm leaving, I said. I had rehearsed the sentence 1,000 times in my head, and none of those versions were this quiet. Mom's eyes brushed the duffel, then climbed back to my face. At midnight? Don't be ridiculous. Ridiculous was tonight, I said. You let them go through my laptop. You let them delete my work. Dad didn't flinch. Work, Rena. That's what you call it? Pretending in our house while we pay for your life? You didn't pay for my life. My voice surprised me. Steady, almost gentle. You paid for a version of me that made sense to you. Stop with the lines, Dad snapped. You're not on a stage. Then stop performing concern, I said. Mom's mouth tightened. Watch your tone. I have, I said, for years. Footsteps on the upstairs landing. Zachary and Tiffany, backlit like villains in a play, though I refused to cast them as only that. Tiffany held her phone the way people hold a chalice. Zachary folded his arms with the casual confidence of someone who's never been told no and had it stick. Running away? He asked, amused. Leaving, I corrected. There's a difference. Mom rose. Rena, sit down. We'll talk in the morning. You're overwrought. I lifted the strap on my shoulder higher. I'm exactly wrought enough. Dad stood, shoulders filling the doorway to the hall. If you walk out that door, you don't come back asking for money. You hear me? I nodded. Good. Then we finally agree on something. Tiffany whispered, God, the theatrics. And I turned to her and felt the old impulse to apologize for existing. I let it die. You broke into my life, I said. The least you could do is be quiet for the exit. Zachary's smile faltered. We were protecting you from embarrassment. I met his eyes and saw the boy who, at 8, had cut the cord on my kite because it wasn't flying right. The boy who'd learned early that control felt like care if you held it at the right angle. You don't protect anyone but your reflection, I said. Mom took a step toward me. I flinched and hated that I did. You are our daughter, she said, voice low, troubled, like she was trying for soft and landing on steel. We have a right to know what you're doing under our roof. That's the problem, I said. You've mistaken proximity for ownership. No one spoke. The house ticked. Light pooled around our feet like we were standing at the edge of something deep. Dad sighed, weary. Where will you go? You can't afford... I'll figure it out. I was surprised again that this, the most uncertain sentence, felt the most certain in my mouth. We stood like that, the four of them a wall, me a hinge, until headlights slid across the front windows and painted us all in motion. The horn beeped once. Brooke. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Of course, she said. The art friend. Graphic designer, I said, who pays her own rent. Zachary smirked. For now. The old door complained as I opened it. Cool night spilled over my face. Smelled like wet pine and a chance. I stepped onto the porch and stopped. I hadn't planned to say goodbye, but leaving without it felt like stealing, and I wanted this to be clean. I turned back. I love you, I said, and I meant it, which startled me. I just can't love you from here. Mom flinched, like I'd thrown something. Dad's jaw moved, working through words he didn't trust to come out right. Zachary made a noise, derisive, wounded, both. Tiffany checked her phone. Don't expect us to come running when this collapses, Dad said finally. I'm not running, I said, stepping backward down the stairs. I'm building. The porch boards gave their familiar creak under my weight. At the bottom, I hesitated again, because this was the house where I learned to ride a bike on the strip of sidewalk that didn't buck, where I failed my first exam and hid under a blanket, where Mom had once held a bowl for me when I was sick, humming a song she thought I couldn't hear. It would be easier if my memories were villains, too. They weren't. That's what made this hurt, and also what made it necessary. Gravel crunched as I crossed the driveway. Brooke's old Honda idled, warm breath in the chill. The passenger window slid down. Her face appeared in a wedge of yellow light, hair knotted, sweatshirt inside out, like she'd pulled it on without thinking. You good? She asked. No, I said, and then yes. I yanked the back door, heaved the duffel in, slid into the seat. The cabin smelled like spearmint and printer ink. Brooke's fingers tapped the wheel once, twice, her version of a hug when my hands were full. Seatbelt, she said. I buckled. The house, my house, filled the mirror. 4 figures in the doorway, a tableau. Dad, a square of stubbornness. Mom, a thin line. Zachary, a shadow that believed in its edges. Tiffany, a gleam. Brooke put the car in drive, then didn't move. Say it, she said. What? The sentence you'll need later, when it gets hard. I stared at the window where my room had been. The maple brushed it, keeping time. I whispered it like a password. I'm allowed to want a life that makes sense to me. Brooke nodded, satisfied. Okay then. We rolled forward. The gravel objected, then relented. When the street took us, I didn't look away. I watched the porch light shrink until it was just another star trying to convince me it was closer than it was. We turned the corner. My chest hurt the way muscles hurt when they wake up. Brooke glanced at me, then at the road. Rules, she said gently. 1, you can stay as long as you want. 2, you're not allowed to apologize for taking up space. 3, if you code past 3 a.m., you have to wear headphones. I let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't snagged on something. Deal, I said. We passed the cafe where I'd refill the tip jar with patience in the morning. The neon was dead, chairs upturned like sleeping animals. Past the park where I'd once timed my runs to avoid being home at dinner. Past the thrift store where Brooke had found the lamp that made her one bedroom look like it believed in itself. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty. It's listening. Brooke's hands loosened on the wheel. Tell me what they did, she said. Not what happened, not the polite version. She knew the difference. I did. The words came in a rush. the way water finds its level once the dam cracks. The Facebook post, the laptop, the files, the laugh Zachary tried to pass as mercy. Brooke didn't interrupt. She let the ugliness take up the space it needed and then handed me back the rest. "We'll rebuild," she said when I finished. "I'll make the interface sing. You fix the guts. Connor still pulling Friday shifts? I'll loop him in if you want." "I do." "Good." She flicked the blinker, turned onto her street, a narrow ribbon of duplexes and overgrown jasmine. "And we'll put locks on everything. Passwords no one can guess. And you're getting version control that lives in the cloud, not just your poor little USB. I patted my bag, absurdly protective. "Hey, don't slander the only thing that kept my future breathing." She grinned. "I'll buy it a tiny cape." Her building crouched under a sycamore, windows warm. She killed the engine. The silence that followed was a new species, no longer the tense kind that lived in my parents' house, but the kind that holds room for a different life to arrive. We carried the duffel up the stairs. Inside, Brooke's apartment wrapped around me. Mismatched mugs, a corkboard pinned with client drafts and dreams, the couch that swallowed you whole if you let it. She pointed to a folded futon in the corner. "Your kingdom," she said, shoes off at the door, secrets safe inside. I set my laptop on this card table that would be a desk by morning. I slid the USB into the machine just to hear the click, the promise. Lines of code glowed in my mind, tender and stubborn. I wasn't empty. I wasn't starting from zero. I was starting from enough. Brooke tossed me a blanket. "Sleep," she ordered. "Tomorrow we'll write the part where you win." I lay down, heart still audible, but no longer sprinting. The city hummed through the walls. Somewhere someone laughed. Not at me, not near me, not because of me. For a second, fear lunged. What if Dad was right? What if this collapsed? The fear did its dance, then got tired. I pressed my palm to the laptop bag like a promise. They'd deleted files. I'd rebuild a life. And this time, it would belong to me. Brooke's apartment smelled faintly of espresso grounds and printer ink. Morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, turning the walls into soft gold. I woke up disoriented, then remembered everything. The dinner, the files, the escape. For a long minute, I just listened. The hum of the fridge, the click of Brooke's keyboard from the next room, the ordinary music of a life I could finally call mine. I sat up, wrapped in the blanket she'd tossed me. My duffel slouched beside the futon like it had survived a war. I opened my laptop, heart racing as the screen blinked awake. The USB drive waited on the table, a lifeline disguised as plastic. When I plugged it in and saw my backup folders appear, intact, I exhaled for the first time in days. "Still breathing?" Brooke's voice drifted from the kitchen. She appeared with 2 mugs of coffee, her hair twisted into a bun that looked both chaotic and purposeful. "Barely," I said, taking a sip. It was too strong, exactly how she liked it. She sat across from me, scanning my screen. "So this is the dream?" "Yeah. Budget blocks." The name looked too small on the folder label, like a word trying to carry a universe. Brooke smiled faintly. "Then let's make it real." Days bled together. Mornings at the cafe, nights hunched over my laptop in the flicker of Brooke's desk lamp. The apartment was tiny, but it breathed easier than the house I'd left behind. Brooke's clients, a rotating cast of small businesses and indie creators, kept her busy, but she still made time to glance over my wireframes, offering design notes between spoonfuls of ramen. By week 2, I'd rewritten every deleted line of code from memory. The logic flowed smoother this time, cleaner. Pain had a way of sharpening focus. Still, there were bugs I couldn't fix alone. That's when Connor Reed started showing up again. Connor had been working with me at the cafe for months, a quiet guy who spoke fluent sarcasm but never pushed past polite. When he'd overheard me mention my app before, he'd seemed curious. Now, when Brooke told him what I was building, he knocked on the apartment door one evening, holding a bag of takeout and a laptop under his arm. "You mentioned predictive budgeting," he said. "Mind if I take a look?" Brooke grinned. Translation: he's been dying for an excuse to code with someone who doesn't crash their terminal every 5 minutes. I rolled my eyes but gestured him in. We spread out across the coffee table, our screens glowing in the dim room. Connor's approach was meticulous. He'd scan a few lines, hum softly, then rewrite entire segments in a way that made everything run twice as fast. It wasn't showy, just precise. "This part," he said, tapping the screen. "Your algorithm learns from user patterns. But what if it could predict spending habits? Like if it noticed you buy takeout every Friday, it could warn you on Thursday. You mean, I said, intrigued, it learns your bad habits before your wallet does? He grinned. Exactly. Financial guilt automated. Brooke laughed from the couch. Great. A robot therapist for broke millennials. The three of us became a rhythm. Coffee, code, crash, repeat. Connor would bring over cheap sushi or leftover pastries from the cafe. Brooke would play low jazz in the background. At first, the sound of keys clacking at 2 a.m. made me anxious, like I'd be caught, but over time it became the heartbeat of something alive. Sometimes, though, the ghost came back. A notification sound too similar to Mom's tone. The way Connor's brow furrowed, reminding me of Dad's disapproval. I'd freeze for a moment, then push past it. Every bug I fixed, every function I perfected, was a brick in the wall between me and that old house. 3 weeks in, I came home from a long shift at the cafe and found Brooke asleep on the couch, a stylus in her hand, the app's color palette open on her tablet, soft blues and muted greens, calm, trustworthy. I smiled, quietly grateful. The next night, Connor stayed late to help me troubleshoot a crash loop. Around midnight, the apartment went quiet except for the whir of our laptops. Hey, he said, breaking the silence. Can I ask you something? Sure. What really happened with your family? I hesitated. The cursor blinked in a blank field, waiting. They thought they were saving me from myself, I said. Really, they just couldn't stand me doing something they didn't understand. He nodded slowly. So you built something they couldn't control. Yeah, I said. Maybe that's the only kind of success that matters. For the first time since I'd left, I didn't feel small when I talked about it. By the end of the month, budget blocks worked. Not perfectly, but enough to run live tests. We uploaded the beta to a private forum and watched users trickle in. Feedback was blunt, honest, occasionally brutal, but overwhelmingly positive. You realize, Connor said one night, this thing could actually change lives. I wanted to believe him, but part of me still heard Zachary's laughter, Mom's quiet scoff. I opened the app's settings page, staring at the name again. Project Freedom. It had started as a private joke. Now it was becoming prophecy. Brooke set down her stylus and stretched. You know what we should do? Pitch it. The Cascade Tech meetup next month. Big investors, local press, the works. I froze. You're serious? Connor looked up from his screen. She's right. You've got something real here, Rena. Stop hiding it. The thought terrified me. Pitching meant exposure. It meant people seeing my name, and maybe them seeing it too. But then I remembered something my mom had said years ago, during one of her lectures. If you're so confident in your ideas, prove it. Fine, I thought, maybe I will. I looked at Brooke and Connor, two people who'd shown me more belief in a month than my family had in a lifetime. Okay, I said, a slow smile forming. Let's do it. The words felt like ignition. I didn't know it then, but that night would mark the line between the girl who coded in secret and the woman about to step into the light. The morning of the pitch, I woke up before dawn. The city was still, washed pale in mist. From Brooke's balcony, Eugene looked fragile, like the world was holding its breath. I stood there barefoot, coffee mug warming my hands, and whispered a line I'd written on a sticky note above my desk. You built this out of nothing. Don't forget that. Connor texted at 6:42 a.m. Cars downstairs, bring the demo, and coffee, preferably in that order. Brooke handed me a paper bag on my way out. Muffins and a small folded card that just said, remember who you are. She grinned. Go make tech bros uncomfortable. The Cascade Tech Accelerator was in downtown Portland, all glass walls and ambition. The air buzzed with caffeine and nerves. Startups pitched everything, from AI recipe generators to apps that promise to help you find your higher self in 10 minutes. Connor and I set up at a table near the back, our demo looping on 2 laptops. He adjusted his tie, which looked hilariously out of place on him. You ready? No, I said, but that's not stopping me. When our turn came, the stage lights were blinding. My hands trembled as I plugged in the HDMI cable. For a second, the screen stayed black, my reflection staring back. A ghost of the person who'd once been too scared to speak at family dinners. Then the logo flickered on. Budget blocks, clean, confident, ours. Connor opened with the technical rundown, sharp and concise. Then it was my turn. I took a breath. We built budget blocks because managing money shouldn't feel like punishment. It should feel like possibility. My voice found rhythm as I talked. I told them about our predictive algorithm, how it learned spending habits to guide users toward smarter choices. I mentioned the interface Brooke designed to make finances feel approachable, not shameful. But I also told a story, the one about how the app started from the mess of my own life. How I'd been broke, scared, and told to give up. How a single USB drive carried the future I refused to let anyone erase. The room went quiet. Not the bored kind of quiet, the listening kind. Connor jumped back in to demo real-time projections. The graphs pulsed like living data. Applause rose, hesitant at first, then real. When we stepped off stage, my heart was still galloping, but I was smiling. A man in a navy blazer intercepted us near the refreshment table. "Rena Calloway?" he asked, offering a card. "I'm Mark from Cascade Tech." That was refreshing. Most people pitch numbers. You pitched conviction. He asked for a meeting. My pulse went wild. 2 weeks later, we were back in Portland for that meeting. The Cascade offices were sleek, all muted tones, and impossible calm. I wore the blazer I'd saved for exactly this kind of day, hands damp against the folder in my lap. The executives listened as we walked them through projections, scalability, and integration potential. When Connor showed the beta's predictive dashboard, one of them actually whistled. Mark leaned back, impressed. "We'll get to the point. Cascade wants to license budget blocks for integration into our personal finance suite. The initial contract, $5 million. The number hung in the air like thunder. Connor blinked. "Million?" Mark smiled. "With room to grow if it scales the way we expect." I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, not from disbelief, but from everything that had come before. Every insult, every deleted file, every night spent believing my dream was ridiculous. I signed my name on the dotted line that afternoon. The pen trembled once, then steadied. That night, we celebrated in Brooke's apartment with cheap champagne and delivery pizza. Connor read the contract 3 more times just to confirm it was real. Brooke drew a tiny crown on my takeout box with a Sharpie and wrote, "Queen of Code and Consequences." At some point between laughter and exhaustion, I slipped out to the balcony. The city below shimmered. The phone in my pocket buzzed. Notifications from LinkedIn, tech blogs, messages from local reporters. My name was out there now. And in the back of my mind, a quiet voice asked, "What happens when they see it?" I thought of my family, Mom's sharp eyes, Dad's silence, Zachary's smirk, and something colder than fear settled in my chest. Success didn't erase the past. It illuminated it. I raised my glass to the night sky. "They'll find out eventually," I whispered. "But this time, they'll see it on my terms." The stars above didn't answer. They didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for permission. 6 months after signing the Cascade Tech deal, I'd stopped flinching at my own success. My mornings began in an office overlooking downtown Eugene, where sunlight struck the window just right to make the glass look alive. Connor and I had a small team now. 2 interns, a developer, and Brooke as our full-time designer. The app had over 100,000 downloads. The press called me a self-taught disruptor, and our inbox was a storm of investors and partnership offers. But success has a way of summoning ghosts. It started one quiet morning. My phone buzzed with a notification, an unfamiliar number. The message preview stopped my breath. "Zachary, we need to talk about the money." I stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen. My reflection in the office glass looked calm, but inside, something old and heavy stirred. I hadn't spoken to any of them since that night I walked out. 6 months of silence, peace, and space I'd fought for. Connor noticed my stillness. "You okay?" I locked the phone. "Yeah," I lied. "Just spam." But my heart didn't believe it. By lunch, there was another message. "Mom, your brother said he reached out. Don't ignore family. We've always supported you." Supported me? I almost laughed out loud. The same woman who called me a failure now wrapped herself in the word support like it was a blanket to hide under. Then came the voicemail, from Tiffany. I recognized her syrupy tone before she even said her name. "Rena, we're so proud of you, sweetheart. $5 million. Wow. But let's be fair, okay? You lived with us for years. Food, rent, utilities, you owe us something. Half seems reasonable." Half. I let the voicemail play twice, disbelieving. She even had the nerve to giggle at the end, as if it were all a friendly negotiation. Connor leaned against my desk, watching my expression darken. "That bad?" "Worse," I said quietly. They think they own part of my success. He nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Let them think it. Doesn't make it true. I wanted to agree, but old habits die loud. Part of me still craved their approval, even after everything. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through Facebook, a thing I'd avoided since the day they humiliated me there. And there it was, Tiffany's new post. Tiffany Norris. Some people forget who helped them when they had nothing. Family sacrifice is everything, and now Rena thinks she's too good for us. The comments were a feeding frenzy. Ungrateful. Fame changes people. Typical of her age. No loyalty. My stomach churned. They were rewriting the story in real time, turning my escape into betrayal. Connor called. You saw it? I saw it, I said. My voice was steady, but my hands weren't. Then don't let them pull you back, he said. You've already won. You don't owe them your peace, too. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. I need to end this properly. Careful, he warned. Closure with people like that isn't a door, it's a trap. He wasn't wrong, but I was done letting them speak for me. The next morning, I called Zachary. He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting. Finally, we need to discuss dividing that money. Mom and Dad. I cut him off. You think you deserve a share of something you mocked me for creating? Mocked you. His tone hardened. We supported you while you freeloaded for 3 years. That's an investment, Rena. You owe us return. You invaded my privacy, I said, heat rising. You deleted my code. You laughed at me in front of your wife. And now you want to pretend you built any of this? He went quiet. I could almost hear the gears turning, the part of him that hated not being in control. Be reasonable, he said finally, voice low. You're acting out of emotion. Reasonable? I repeated. You called me an embarrassment. You destroyed my work. And now that it's worth something, you want to cash in? That's not family, Zachary. That's theft. Tiffany's voice suddenly cut in on speaker. Don't talk to him like that. We gave you shelter, Rena. Food. You'd be nothing without us. Nothing? My laugh came sharp and tired. Then how did nothing build $5 million worth of something? Stop being dramatic, she snapped. I took a deep breath. I'm done letting you define what I owe. You got enough from me already. My confidence, my silence, my peace. You don't get a cent more. Zachary hissed through his teeth. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but I'll regret staying small even more. And I hung up. Afterward, the silence was deafening. I stared at my reflection in the window again. No tears this time, just clarity. My phone buzzed twice more. Voicemails, guilt trips, manipulations in sweet packaging. But I didn't listen. I blocked them all. When I told Brooke and Connor, they didn't cheer or gloat. They just nodded, quietly proud. You didn't lose them today, Brooke said. You just finally stopped letting them lose you. That night, I wrote an email to a lawyer. The subject line was simple. Safeguarding my work. I was done playing defense. The Norris family could twist the narrative online, but they couldn't touch the truth anymore. My success wasn't built on their approval. It was built in spite of it. And as I closed my laptop, a strange calm settled in. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to exist. I thought blocking them would end it. But silence has a way of echoing louder than noise. For weeks, I lived in that strange calm where everything looked fine but felt slightly off, like a room that's been cleaned after an argument. Cascade Tech had officially rolled out budget blocks, now a headline feature in their new product line. My name appeared in press releases, interviews, even a local TV segment where they called me Oregon's self-taught fintech phenomenon. People congratulated me in coffee shops, sent emails saying my story inspired them. And yet, some nights, I still woke up expecting to hear my mother's voice through the wall. Sharp, rehearsed, accusing. Brooke called it emotional lag. You escaped, she said one evening as we sat in my apartment eating takeout straight from the containers. But your nervous system's still catching up. She was right. I had all the proof of success, but none of the peace. Then the gossip began to reach me. Quietly at first, then louder. Eugene's social circles were small. Word traveled. A former cafe regular messaged me. Hey, I overheard Tiffany at that new bistro downtown. She was telling people you stole money from your family to start your company. I read it twice. My chest tightened. Stole money? The audacity of it was almost theatrical. Another message came from an old neighbor. Your mom said you used their credit cards for business expenses. Is that true? She sounded heartbroken. I wanted to scream, to march over and confront them, but Connor stopped me. Don't, he said firmly. You've already won. Let their story collapse under its own weight. But it was hard. Every rumor felt like a fingerprint pressed into the glass of my new life. A month later, karma started to show its teeth. Zachary's law firm dropped him. I found out through a mutual acquaintance who worked downtown. Apparently, one of his clients had seen Tiffany's Facebook rants, posts dripping with entitlement and bitterness, and decided he was unprofessional. Word spread quickly in Portland's legal circles. Tiffany, meanwhile, had been quietly blacklisted from the charity circuit she used to dominate. The same people who once toasted her at fundraisers now avoided her table. No one wanted to be photographed with someone who turned private family drama into public gossip. Even my parents weren't immune. Their neighborhood, once so eager to flaunt suburban perfection, had turned judgmental. People whispered that they'd driven their daughter away and tried to steal from her after she made it. Mom's book club disbanded. Dad stopped showing up at church. When Brooke showed me screenshots of the online threads discussing it, I didn't feel triumph, just exhaustion. "They're unraveling," she said quietly. "Yeah," I said, staring at the screen. "And somehow it still hurts." Because the truth was, I never wanted revenge. I just wanted peace. One night, I stayed late at the office. The others had gone home, leaving behind half-empty coffee cups and the soft hum of machines. The code on my screen blurred, but I couldn't stop working. Coding had always been my refuge, the place where logic made sense even when people didn't. Somewhere between functions and variables, I realized what had been missing. All my life, I'd been coding to prove something, to show I wasn't the failure they said I was. Now I needed to code for a different reason, because it was mine. That night, I rewrote the app's welcome message. It used to say, "Take control of your budget." I changed it to, "Take control of your story." It felt like reclaiming something invisible. A week later, an email slipped through my filters. It wasn't from Zachary or Tiffany. It was from my mother. The subject line was simple, "Please read." I hesitated before opening it. Her words were polite, measured, like someone drafting a peace treaty. "Rena, I know we've made mistakes. Your father and I only wanted what was best for you. The rumors have gotten out of hand, and we're embarrassed. But we still love you. Maybe we could talk. Just us. No Zachary, no Tiffany, please." For a moment, my throat closed. There was a time when I would have taken that bait immediately, desperate for a scrap of tenderness. But now I could see the manipulation threaded through the apology. Embarrassed, not sorry. "We love you, but only after the world turned against them." I stared at the blinking cursor in the reply box. I typed one word, then deleted it. Instead, I forwarded the email to Brooke with a note. "For context, I'm not replying." She responded 2 minutes later. "Good. Healing doesn't require reopening the wound." I spent that weekend at the coast with Connor and Brooke, a small escape. The Oregon shoreline stretched endlessly, waves gnawing at the sand. Connor brought his camera. Brooke brought sketch pads. I brought nothing but the quiet I'd earned. We built a small bonfire at dusk. The air smelled of salt and cedar. Connor handed me a stick, half smiling. "What are you thinking about?" "My family," I admitted. "How much of them still lives in my head?" He nodded. "That's okay. You don't have to erase them. Just rewrite what they mean." I poked the fire, watching sparks lift into the dark. "Rewrite, huh? Maybe that's all I've ever done." Brooke tossed in a driftwood piece that hissed as it burned. "Then make this your final edit." The flames flared, lighting their faces, people who had stood beside me without conditions or control. My chosen family. My peace, written in warmth and salt air. When we drove back the next day, I didn't check my messages. The silence didn't feel like a threat anymore. It felt earned. Some lines, both in code and in life, should never be crossed. And I finally understood the power of leaving them uncrossed. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary day that never expects to carry weight. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when my phone lit up with a new number. Unknown, but familiar enough in tone. I didn't have to open the text to know. "Zachary, family sticks together. Don't make this permanent." I stared at the words, felt their practiced guilt, their false calm. The same tactic he'd always used. Not an apology, not love, just control dressed as reason. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city through the floor-to-ceiling glass. Autumn had brushed the streets gold, and rain shimmered on the roofs like threads of mercury. Somewhere down there, people were living lives untouched by this history, buying coffee, running late, laughing with friends. And I envied them, but also, for the first time, I realized I could be one of them. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, he's reaching out because he still cares. We all do. Please respond, Rena. Family shouldn't be forever divided. I smiled, not bitterly, but with the kind of quiet clarity that comes after too many storms. They weren't reaching out because they cared. They were reaching out because the silence had finally stopped bending toward them. I opened a blank message and typed, "Family isn't about blood, it's about respect. You broke that. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just free." I reread it, then deleted it. Not out of hesitation, but completion. Some truths don't need an audience. They only need to be said once inside your own mind. Instead, I opened the text thread, blocked the number, and archived it. A small, unceremonious act, but it felt monumental. That evening, Brooke and Connor came by the office. Brooke plopped a paper bag of Thai food onto my desk, uninvited as always. Connor leaned against the window, arms crossed. "You did it, didn't you?" Brooke asked, scanning my face. I nodded. "Blocked him." She grinned. "Finally." Connor gave a quiet nod of approval. "So what now?" I looked around. The glass walls, the hum of servers, the quiet confidence of a space I'd built from scratch. Now I live without waiting for their permission. Brooke raised her drink can in a mock toast. 2 boundaries. "To beginnings," I added. Connor clinked his cup against ours. "To both." We ate on the floor like teenagers after a long exam, laughing about small things. Brooke's disastrous haircut in college, Connor's caffeine addiction, the time our app accidentally categorized someone's cat food purchases as retirement planning. For once, laughter didn't have to compete with shame. It could just exist. Later, when they left, I stayed behind, staring at the city again. The office lights dimmed automatically, leaving the reflection of my own face against the skyline. That's when I saw it, the faint ghost of who I'd been. The girl who'd sat in her childhood bedroom coding in the dark, afraid someone would knock and take it all away. She was still there, but she wasn't scared anymore. She was watching me, proud. I reached into my bag and pulled out the USB drive, the same one that had survived everything. The label, written in Sharpie months ago, had faded. Project Freedom. I smiled. "You did your job." I placed it into a small glass case on the bookshelf, a reminder, not of the pain, but of the proof that I could build something from nothing. My computer chimed with a notification. A new article had gone live. Budget Blocks hits 1 million users. I laughed softly. 1 million. And somewhere out there, Zachary was probably reading it too. But for once, I didn't care what he thought. Before heading home, I typed one last note in my digital journal, a habit I'd picked up to replace the urge to defend myself. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It means closing the door without locking it, and choosing not to stand in the doorway anymore. I saved it, shut down the computer, and turned off the lights. Outside, the city breathed. Neon reflections trembled on wet pavement. I walked toward my car, the rain just starting to fall, soft, insistent, like it had been waiting for me. For the first time in years, there was no tug from behind, no invisible leash of guilt, just the rhythm of my steps and the sound of my own life moving forward. And when I glanced up, the skyline shimmered back at me, 1,000 tiny lights, all whispering the same thing. You made it out, and you made it matter. They say healing is quiet. They never tell you how strange that quiet can feel when you've lived your whole life braced for noise. It's been a year since that last message, a full year of mornings where I wake up and don't check my phone, expecting a fight. A year where the word family no longer means a house filled with rules and raised voices, but the people who show up without asking for proof that you're worth it. The company has grown, bigger than I could have imagined. Connor runs the technical division now. Brooke leads design and brand partnerships. We opened a new office in Portland overlooking the river. Sometimes I catch myself pausing at the window the same way I used to in Eugene, half expecting to feel small again. But that feeling doesn't come anymore. Instead, I feel steady, rooted. When interviews come around, they always want the same headline, from barista to millionaire developer. I smile for the camera, but I never correct them, because the real story wouldn't fit in an article. It's not about money or downloads or contracts. It's about that night I left home with a duffel bag and a USB drive full of dreams that no one believed in but me. It's about the mornings that followed, when success wasn't visible yet, but I kept coding anyway. It's about learning that peace doesn't come when everyone apologizes. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. Last week, I went back to Eugene for the first time. Not for them, just to see. The maple tree outside that old house had grown tall enough to shadow the roof. The curtains were different, the porch light dimmer. Someone else lives there now. I stood across the street just for a minute, feeling nothing like the trembling girl who'd walked out that night. No anger, no fear, just distance, and the kind of forgiveness that doesn't need to be spoken to exist. I whispered, "Thank you," though I'm not sure to whom. Maybe to the version of myself who kept going. Maybe to the silence that followed. Then I turned and walked away. Back in Portland, our team celebrated 1 million active users. Brooke hung a banner made of printer paper and string lights. Connor played a playlist he titled Proof You Can't Delete. We toasted with cheap champagne and laughed until the lights flickered out. When I got home, I opened my journal again, the same digital file where I'd been writing since the night of my first pitch. Tonight's entry was short. It's strange how peace doesn't make noise, yet it fills the whole room. The girl they called a failure built something that doesn't need their validation to exist, and she's finally okay with that. I saved the file, backed it up, old habits die hard, and looked around my apartment. The walls were warm beige, the plants thriving, the air filled with faint city hum. My space, my life, my terms. Before sleeping, I opened Budget Blocks one more time. Our tagline, the one I'd changed months ago, blinked back at me. Take control of your story. And I realized I already had. If you've ever been called a failure by the people who should have believed in you, if you've ever been told your dreams were ridiculous or your efforts small or your worth conditional. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you were right to keep going. That's what I did. And now, when I think about family, I don't see bloodlines or last names. I see Brooke's ink-stained hands sketching wireframes at midnight. I see Connor's tired grin when the code finally runs without crashing. I see my reflection in a screen that once terrified me and now feels like home. I built my future from broken code and burned bridges, and somehow it runs perfectly.